Good morning, folks. It is the 21st of May, Victoria Day weekend. We were forced to remain in Ottawa because of flooding along the Gatineau River. That doesn't make me happy. Very often, I will make prophetic pronouncements on this channel, not because I had some bolt of lightning strike me from the heavens, but because simply by looking at the nature of our current social and political crisis and philosophical crisis, and looking at the historical context of such, I'm forced to conclude that certain things are becoming inevitable. I have been reasonably accurate in the predictions that I've been making as far back as, well, I started more consistently by 2013, 2014 to state what I felt was going wrong in terms of our system of governance and how we view ourselves and the crisis that the Western world finds itself in, a crisis of conscience and of identity. So I've written the following this morning that I wish to share with you. Please bear with me. Why our government is a house of cards, constructed of lies and ideologies so nutty that they contradict themselves. The oligarchs long ago lost control of the narrative. Alternative news media, the popularity of academics like Jordan B. Peterson, Stephen Hicks, Mark Milka, Gad Saad, and John Robson, just to name a few, who are openly condemning the corruption endemic in the postmodern academy, the exposure of the prevalence of political corruption, which has been supported by social media's active campaign of disinformation, have all become common knowledge. Payback is going to be a bitch. Public opinion and anger over the lies we have been fed by our elite class are about to cause a major rejection of the type of social collectivism our governments have tried to force upon us, which rejects our individual identity and the civil liberties which protect the individual. Critical race theory is the most blatant attempt to recreate racism under the false banner of equity ever devised by perverse ideologues whose theories contradict themselves. The elite are about to find out just how disenchanted the average Joe and Jane have become with their campaign of lies and authoritarianism, because we will take back our legislative assemblies to forcibly restore them to the control of, by, and for the people, since it is to the people that they belong, rather than to a wealthy cadre of evil globalists who control our elected representatives like puppets. And now for a history lesson, since our memories are short, and we might therefore believe that there is no precedence for rebellion against authoritarianism in Canada. In 1837 and 1838, the Mackenzie Papanel rebellion occurred. It was led by William Lyon Mackenzie here in what is now Ontario, what was formerly Upper Canada, and by Papanel in Lower Canada or Quebec. Jumping ahead to 1849, after the rebellion, the burning of Parliament buildings in Montreal was an important event in pre-Confederation Canada. It occurred on the night of April the 25th, 1849, in Montreal, the then capital of the province of Canada, which was the first version of Canada to exist. We no longer had Upper and Lower Canada. We had the United Provinces of Canada East and Canada West. It is considered a crucial moment in the development of the Canadian democratic tradition. Notice that this rebellion was a crucial moment in the development of our democracy, largely as a consequence of how the matter was dealt with by then co-prime ministers of the United Province of Canada, Sir Louis Hippolyte Lafontaine and Robert Baldwin. The St. Anne's Market building lodging the Legislative Council and Assembly of Canada was burnt down by Tory rioters as a protest against the Rebellion Losses Bill, while the members of the Legislative Assembly were sitting in session. So they set fire to the building while it was in session. Now it's fascinating. Notice that the burning of Parliament in Montreal was done by the Tories, while the Mackenzie Papanel Rebellion was done by those who founded the tradition of liberalism in Canada. So the Liberals wanted more personal freedom and autonomy and freedom from Great Britain, and the Tories got ticked off that they were forced to pay for the damages done during the Mackenzie Papanel Rebellion. There were protests right across British North America. The episode is characterized by divisions in pre-Confederation Canadian society concerning whether Canada was the North American appendage of the British Empire or a nascent sovereign nation. So, you see, the British Empire was the 1849 version of the globalist elite we now see pulling our parliamentarian strings. In 1837 and 1838, Canada was hit by an economic depression caused partly by unusually bad weather and the banking crisis in the United States and Europe, which is what we're seeing today. Printing money that has no value behind it. Runaway inflation. A few Canadians in Upper and Lower Canada, now the Canadian provinces of Ontario and Quebec respectively, use the bad economic climate to demand political change. The rebellions of 1837 occurred first in Lower Canada, then in Upper Canada. After Lord Durham's political report, reforms followed the rebellions. So in spite of the fact that Mackenzie and Papanel failed to overthrow the government, in fact, Mackenzie was the mayor of Toronto. The rebellion failed, but they were heard in Parliament at Westminster, and reforms came to politics here in Canada, where limited suffrage came to Upper Canada, came to the Canadas rather, where if you held land and you were a man, you had the right to vote. Many key leaders of the rebellions would play focal roles in the development of the political and philosophical foundations for an independent Canada, something achieved on July the 1st, 1867. The Rebellion Losses Bill was intended to offer both amnesty to former rebels, permitting them to return to Canada, people like William Lyon Mackenzie, who did return. In fact, it was his grandson, the very man that tried to overthrow the government, his grandson, of course, William Lyon Mackenzie King, was our prime minister during the Second World War. It allowed the rebels, permitting them to return to Canada, and an indemnity to individuals who had suffered financial losses as a consequence of the rebellions. In Upper Canada only, those not convicted of rebellion were compensated. Lord Durham had granted an amnesty to those involved in the first rebellion, but not to those in the second rebellion. The rioters wanted the compensation money to go only to the loyalist French and English Canadians. The Rebellion Losses Bill diverted money away from just loyalists, but to many who had caused the rebellion. The bill was passed by the majority of those sitting in the Legislative Assembly and remained unpopular with most of the population of Canada East and West, whose tax money went to the rebels. Those in Montreal decided to use violence to demonstrate their opposition. It is the only time in the history of the British Empire and Commonwealth that citizens burnt down the parliamentary buildings in protest. The parliament buildings were destroyed amidst considerable mob violence, and an invaluable collection of historical records kept in the parliamentary library were lost forever. Now, I need to explain clearly that I am not inciting violence. I am merely telling you that this is our history, and that there is indeed a precedent for people getting so fed up with government overreach that they were willing to do such things. However, despite the tense situation and deplorable socio-cultural crime committed by the mob, LaFontaine proceeded cautiously, fought off armed thugs who had shot through his window, and maintained restraint and resolve in his actions. Can you imagine Justin Trudeau maintaining restraint and resolve? I make myself laugh. Jailed members of the mob were released on bail soon after their arrest, and a force of special constables established to keep the peace. Though there was public concern this might be a crushing blow to the reform movement, LaFontaine persevered despite the opposition and would continue in his role, developing the tenets of Canadian federalism, peace, order, and good government. Within a decade, public opinion had shifted overwhelmingly in the development of a sovereign Canada. This is my hope. This is my prophecy. I believe that we are intended to be a sovereign nation, not beholden to global oligarchs. So there are some things to think and pray about in our current crisis with this coalition between Justin Trudeau and the NDP. We have a government that has far exceeded its constitutional authority to govern. God bless you all. Consider this. Read more on the 1837-1838 Mackenzie Papanel Rebellion and the burning of Parliament in Montreal. It is a fascinating part of our history. We will see if it's about to be repeated.